Okay, I have 10 a.m., so we'll get started. Notice of the time and place of these committee meetings was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing same in the Omaha World Herald, Oppd Outlets newsletter, oppd.com, and social media, by displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on January 13th, 2023. Thank you all for joining us remotely via WebEx event. As a reminder to board members, executive leadership team, and Oppd staff, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise. Members of the public, thank you for attending. You are in listen-only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. Per the board's guidelines for public participation, we do not take public comment during the all committees meeting. We will take public comment at the board meeting on Thursday, January 19th, which will be conducted in person at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center, and it will begin at 5 p.m. The public may attend in person or remotely via WebEx events by going to oppd.com. Our agenda for today's meeting is as follows. So Director Moody will provide the governance report, Director Spurgeon will provide the finance report, Director Williams will provide systems management and nuclear oversight report, and Director Mulhoff will provide the public information report. Joining me today via WebEx are my fellow board members, Mike Kavanaugh, Matt Core, Sarah Howard, Denise Mulhoff, Craig Moody, Mary Spurgeon, and Eric Williams. A big welcome to Matt Core for joining our board this month. We also have members of our executive leadership team, our general counsel, Steve Bruckner with the Fraser Stryker Law Firm, and Oppd staff. Additionally, we have how many attendees? We have about 44 attendees in this meeting, consisting of Oppd employees and members of the public. As I indicated before, we will receive all of the committee reports, and now Javier will provide the safety briefing. Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Chair Bogner. Good morning, everyone. We have, just as we always do, on every Oppd meeting, we begin with a message of safety. It's very important. So on the left hand of your screen, you will see the physical safety reminders. Some of us are working in the office. I see some of you are working from home, so your physical environment is going to vary. But nevertheless, I would ask that you make sure that you have everything you need in case of an emergency. That you have, in the case of us here in the office, we've located the location of fire extinguishers, AED, and first aid kits, as well as all the exits. For those of us in the office and people at home, make sure that all of the floors are free of cables or tripping hazards should you have to exit your location in the case of an emergency. If you're not feeling well, we continue to ask you to stay home. This is the season of lots of infections. So the wonders of technology allow us to still participate in meetings without necessarily having to be in person sharing germs. If you find yourself in the need of help or assistance during this call and you are alone in your place of work or at home, I highly encourage you to make sure that someone on this call, on this WebEx call, has information that can help us assist you. That would be either the phone number of a loved one or your physical address. If we need to send help, we don't know where you are, we don't know how to contact your loved ones, just make sure that someone on this call has that information if you need help. For those of us here in the office, active shooter is unfortunately a reality that we all have to deal with. At Oppd, that manifests itself as code 32. If you hear code 32 in one of our Oppd buildings, that means that we have an active shooter, in which case the protocol is to run, to hide, and to fight in that order. Make sure that you are aware of your surroundings. Where would you run if you had to run? Where would you hide? And do a physical walk around before you ever have to find out places to hide or places to run. On the right hand of the screen, we have psychological safety. We have multiple perspectives: respect, culture of curiosity, trust, and healthy conflict. Today, I'm going to focus on the culture of curiosity. Assume good intent. Assume everyone here is here to learn. We are always learning. We're always trying to find out new aspects of jobs that we may have been doing for years. That inquisitive culture, inquisitive nature of our conversations lead to discoveries of new ways of finding work. So when it is important for us to welcome that culture of curiosity, when people ask for more information, I am seeking to understand, we respectfully respond and answer in a way that satisfies that curiosity of our coworkers. Next slide, please, Ms. Laps. January, the big focus for us is refocusing after the holiday season. Some of us were able to take a few days or a couple of weeks off. Coming back on, it's super important for us to refocus on the work that we do. This is certainly important for our field workers. This happens every holiday season. We have to refocus, make sure that our field crews are in the right mindset to begin their heavy schedule of work. Winter storm safety, you all probably have heard on the news. We are expecting quite a bit of snow tomorrow and into Thursday. So be prepared for hazard conditions, driving conditions. As you're getting in your vehicle, make sure that you have warm clothes, a blanket. If you get stranded, you definitely don't want to be in your vehicle without that equipment. These will be very important on Thursday for some of us here on the call, as we will be driving into downtown for our in-person board meeting. I ask you to just be extra careful. Allow yourself enough time to arrive safely to the destination. And lastly, ergonomics. Whether you're sitting at a desk like I am right now or turning a wrench, take some time this month to consider ergonomic safety. What can be done to avoid musculoskeletal disorders and other associated injuries before you begin any work? Make sure that you're in the right position and that you've warmed up to make sure that you can do the task that you have in front of you. And that, Chair Bogner, concludes my safety briefing.
Thank you. I'll just add, every hour we all need to be standing up and walking around a little bit too. So thank you very much. We'll now move on to Governance Committee report. Director Moody, can you please take it over?
Thank you, Director Bogner. Good morning, colleagues. The Governance Committee met on January 12th, and given Director Yoder's departure, we welcomed Director Spurgeon to our meeting. So it was me, Director Bogner, Director Williams, and Director Spurgeon. You see the agenda in front of you. We will talk about item number 2 here in a moment, and we'll get into the board work plan later today. For the chair's report, the board workshop, a quick update for you, pulling up my notes. We had a good discussion about a couple different avenues by which we could hold our board workshop, and we settled on basically a similar version to what we've done in the past, which will start with a survey and then really kind of focus on alignment on governance issues and also sort of some policy discussion. So lots and lots more to come on that. From a timing perspective, we're going to give Director Core a little bit of ramp up time before we throw him into a workshop. So we're looking at probably the May-June timeframe for that to occur. So there will be some activities and some homework, some interviews that you'll be doing in advance of that. But we've got I think a good line of sight into exactly what we want to do there. Some more to come, but that's it for today. So that concludes my chair's report. I want to now fly it back over to Director Bogner to talk about the next 2 agenda items, actually. So Director Bogner, you're up.
All right, thank you. So we've been working kind of behind the scenes on identifying who will be leadership for this coming year. It's been my absolute pleasure being your chair for the last 2 years, but it's now time to move on from that. So if you want to flip to the next slide, whomever's controlling that, maybe the next one as well. We are going to offer up this slate for consideration on Thursday. Would anyone like to have any discussion on this right now? So preparing Director Williams to be chair, Director Mulhoff to be vice chair of the board, Director Moody as secretary, and Director Spurgeon as treasurer. Any comments or questions about this slate? Okay, we can move on to the next item. I'll take no comments as good news, and then with that, Director Williams and I have been working through standing committee assignments, and so we can flip to the next slide. And these are the committee assignments that we're also going to offer up on Thursday for approval. Any questions or comments about those? Okay,
These will take effect immediately after the board meeting, yes, or next February meetings will be, yeah, okay, got it.
Go ahead, Director Spurgeon.
Thank you. I think that the intent here is to divide us into two committees that can be met with if there's an emergency, so you don't have to meet with all three to inform all of the directors. Is that correct?
That is correct. This actually provides us a lot of flexibility because there are two basically groupings of a 4-4 split. So in the event that we need to have, I would say, off-committee topics show up on our committee agenda, the district leadership and board staff support has that flexibility to disseminate that information during our monthly pre-committee meetings. All right, any other questions or comments?
Director Mulhoff?
Thank you, I didn't see the hand.
All good.
Yeah, thanks to Amanda and everyone who came up with this slate. I know it's not an easy task, figuring out who's going to be in the leadership positions, and I appreciate all the work that you did on this, and look forward to serving in a new role for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we can move on to our next agenda item, which, all right, that I think concludes then Governance Committee, correct, Director?
Governance out, you bet.
Okay, we'll move on now to Finance Committee. Director Spurgeon, will you please provide us the Finance Chair report this month?
Thank you, Chair Bogner. As acting interim treasurer, early in 2023, I conferenced with Chief Financial Officer Jeff Bishop. Typically, the Finance Committee meets very early each month, and that being so, the financial data for the end of the year financial reports for 2022 had not yet been received, let alone compiled for reports. Sometimes there are internal documents that have been revised and require some oversight and approval, but that was not true of this January. While this committee has more work to do around SD2 rates, we are currently at a pause point awaiting we attended in 2022. So until we receive that report and have some time to read and digest it, we're just pausing that work. So all of the above being true, I determined that there was really no business for the Finance Committee at this time in January. So we did not meet. We will anticipate having quite a bit of business in February as a result, I think. So no meeting for the Finance Committee this month. Back to you, Chair Bogner.
All right, thank you. And there are also no other types of reports that fall under this committee this month. So we are swiftly moving to the next committee, which is Systems Management and Nuclear Oversight. Director Williams.
Great, thanks very much. The Systems Committee did meet on January 4th, and we did welcome Director Kaur to that meeting as kind of some background information about systems. That's generally a committee where new directors are able to drink from the fire hose, as they say, and gain a lot of information about operations. So glad to have him join. We had a bit of a discussion about Winter Storm Elliott. There have been past winter storms that had more influence in our area. Most of the impacts from Elliott were further east from us, but we did talk about that. And then we talked about resource planning, which has been a discussion topic over recent months. The last months and years, the Systems Committee has focused on kind of long-term outcomes and policy updates. And recently we've shifted to discussion of the growth that we're seeing in our service territory in the industrial, commercial, and residential sectors, and how OPPD staff is doing an excellent job of preparing for that growth and having resource plans that are meeting the needs of our customers and providing the affordable, reliable, and environmentally sensitive energy. So we had that discussion, and I anticipate that the new Systems Committee will continue that discussion moving forward. But I'm glad that we were able to have some of that discussion in January, so that we can continue to anticipate what's coming from the resource planning perspective. We also talked briefly about some action items, but none of them had any features which needed to be discussed in closed session. And so all of those items are here now in the open session, the all committee meeting. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Troy for the presentation of the action item information that was briefly discussed, but will be provided more depth here today. So Troy, do you have action items for us?
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Williams. And you teed me up very well here because this is about supporting the growth that we're having in our service territory. I have two contracts today. Both of them are for a single substation that we are needing to build to support some of that growth that we see going on. We've got a lot of infrastructure that we're adding to our system over the next few years based upon that growth, and this is just one of many. And both of these items, single substation in Douglas County area, a lot of them recently have been more in that Sarpy region, but this one is in Douglas County. And so the first item here, and I think we have a slide with some pictures if you wouldn't mind going to it, is for a material and labor contract for substation foundations, duct lines, and some miscellaneous work that needs to take place as we built out a new substation. The materials look like concrete, rebar, things of that nature. And as far as the labor that's needed to build this, while our other folks continue to focus on over the 100 substations that we have in our service territory that continue to need to be inspected and updated as part of our asset management programs. We did have 3 proposals that were received for this particular item. All were legally and technically responsive, which is what we love to see in this particular case. And I will say that there were some very small math errors we did see in the applications, but they, more of like a rounding error type, not material. And some of it just had to do with the way they added the different components up with their bid. Very small. As I said, they both were considered legally and technically responsive. The desired completion of this work is June of 2023, with we're likely seeing the substation energized in 24. And after a thorough review, Peak Contracting Group LLC was evaluated to be the lowest and best bid. We've used them before on many substations, so we have good past experience with them. They have a good work product, and they're local out of Springfield, Nebraska. So, in fact, both the contracts we have today are for local companies, which is something we love to see. And so, with that said, I will open it up to any questions.
Great. I don't see or hear any questions. Appreciate the update here about the work that we're doing to continue to meet that growth, Troy, as we talked about. This is, I think we've talked in recent months about the separation of long-term planning activities and the operational and day-to-day execution that your staff handles. And this is in that second category. So if the board doesn't have a lot of questions and comments, that just means that we believe you're doing excellent work, and we appreciate everything that you and your team continue to do. So with that, I don't see or hear any comments or questions. And let's take that to mean it all looks good, and we appreciate the recommendation. I think there's a second item also in this same category. Yes.
That's correct. The steel structures, and I think part of it is we've had several of these contracts in the last couple of years, so the board's also very familiar with substation builds. But this next item is for the steel structures associated with that, that takes place after the contract that we just discussed. And so for this particular item, we had 5 proposals that were received. 4 were legally responsive, and all were technically responsive. And the one that was not legally, they did not provide a guaranteed delivery date, which is really important as we try to make sure we stay on schedule as we build out this new substation. The expectation is for the steel structures to be delivered on site by July of 23. And as we looked through these proposals, Clutie Inc. was evaluated to be the lowest and best bid. They're out in York, Nebraska. Another organization, we're very familiar with their work. They have a really good product. We've been very pleased with what we've seen from them in the past. And you can see the picture that we have up now that shows what those steel structures look like as we work to get our equipment off the ground, as you would see in most substations. And we were very pleased with the bids we saw on this. They're very aggressive compared to some of the recent bids we've seen over the last couple of years. We saw a little reduction in steel cost at the end of the year, as well as, some of these are really about the timing of when you ask for them and how well they fit into the current production cycle of the organization. So very pleased with the outcome. We think it's a pretty good price for these particular steel structures. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Great. So again, we'll look and listen for comments or questions from directors. But Troy, appreciate in both of these presentations the fact that the recommendations are based on competitive bidding. We've had challenges over recent months and years with inflation and cost increases. And so glad to hear that the presentation of the material that you made available for the bidding led to such great outcomes. I do see hands up here. Let's go with Director Bogner.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mr. Vaya, I was going to ask about the difference in the final bid number versus the engineer's estimate, because that is a significantly lower number in my view. But I appreciate your explanation that steel prices have come down, and then it also is all about timing for the company to take on the work and how they need to fill their pipeline to execute. So I appreciate, and my question is satisfied just with your earlier explanation. Thank you.
Great. Dr. Molhoff, did you also have a question?
More of a comment. It's good to see these two items presented at the same time, because it's both the labor and the materials to build the substation. Good to see the growth in the district, and really with all the steel and concrete that's involved in these building projects, just really underscores how carbon intensive our work at Oppd is, and how we have to make sure that every part of our organization is considering the amount of carbon that we're producing and requiring in our work. So just kind of underscores how things really work, and how challenging our net zero goal is for the future. So thank you, Troy, for this update. Appreciate it.
Great. I don't see or hear any other comments or questions. So Troy, again, as with the first item, thank you for the work that you and your team have done. I'm glad to see this presentation. Glad to hear that we have competitive bids. Glad to be moving forward on the resources necessary to provide reliability for all our customers. So thanks very much. And with that, that would be the end of the Systems Committee report.
Thank you very much. We will now take on Public Information Committee. Director Molhoff.
Thank you, Chair Bogner. We did meet and on January 10th. And we had really two items on our agenda, and I believe Lisa and her team will tee those up and take those on. So I'll turn it over to them.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Director Molhoff. We're going to start first with the legislative update. If you could advance the slides. We're on day 9 of the 108th legislature. New senators, new speaker of the legislature, and the list goes on. So our team has been hitting the ground running, and you'll see in this update, there's lots of moving parts during these next several weeks. And then we've also got a couple updates on local and then federal. So Tim O'Brien. Tim O'Brien.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was gonna start.
Apologies.
No worries. Thank you.
I wasn't a panelist yet, so now I'm ready to go. It's a pleasure to provide you an update this morning. As Lisa mentioned, the legislature is driving forward, and a lot has changed since we prepared these slides last week. So I'll speak to a few of the updates. I'm continuing to track the bill count, and it's going up just as we're speaking. So about every 10 minutes, there's been about 10 bills coming in. So we ended the week with a little over 400. We're about 475 bills right now. Likely to see 600 to 700 is the typical amount of bills in a session such as this, in the long session. The last day to enter bills is Wednesday. And so we will be reading a lot over the next couple days. And so that's a little bit of the background. We do read every bill, and then each bill gets referred to a committee, and every bill has a hearing. And so hearings will begin coming up pretty shortly. The speaker is changing things in a lot of different ways, and one thing will be all-day hearings. So that'll start on January 30th, and it'll go to February 10th. February 13th, bill debate will begin. And then we'll jump to March, and that's when priorities. So each senator has the ability to prioritize a bill. The speaker has several that they can prioritize along with committees. And so middle of March is when we really start to see how things will move and shape for the rest of the session. So we'll continue to keep you updated as the speaker provides more direction on the session. And they have a really good website for the board and the public. But the legislature website has great updates, and on the left side there's a speaker button that you can click, and you can see updates on the schedule as the speaker guides us forward. So this week, bill introductions and focusing on the rules moving forward for the legislative session. So that will take much of this week to work through the rules part. Next slide, please. I want to provide just a little bit of background on a couple things. One is the committees, and so much of OPPD's business occurs in the Natural Resource District, or Natural Resources Committee. Senator Bruce Fosselman will chair that committee as well. And so here's a list of all the standing committees with several new senators taking on the chairship of each of these. Next slide. We are really proud to lead 3 pieces of legislation, and want to thank the senators and many of the folks across OPPD that have made this possible. 3 bills, you may have heard me talk about these last year. We're moving, hopefully, these concepts and ideas further this year, and improving the thoughts and ideas around them. So the first is broadband, LB 61. This would allow OPPD to lease or utilize our fiber and telecom assets for lease for other utilities to help to deploy broadband in various areas across our service territory. LB 267 is critical workers. This is one we've worked on the last 2 legislative sessions, and hope that it will move forward this year. This just helps us clarify our employees in situations of emergency or other challenging times, such as the pandemic. We really learned the importance of that. And so that is LB 267. And then lastly, I'm excited about this one. Senator Wayne is helping us to seek more dollars for the weatherization program. And so that is LB 237. So that's the backdrop of 3 bills that were introduced by OPPD, which is quite a bit. Usually we have 1 or 2 bills. Our industry really doesn't have many bills they're leading. There are several bills related to our business that we're reviewing. Our bill tracker will complete our first cut by the end of this week, and Seth Boyles and I are thinking there's probably going to be at least 50 on there, so pretty significant amount of bills that we're watching. The topics range on a whole bunch of fronts, some from Power Review Board statutes. There's some old statutes that just need some cleanup, and so that's an idea for one bill. There's some things on one call, so we've talked about that topic many times in the past, and there's continued interest to just improve one calls for the location of infrastructure. There's many bills on broadband. There's several things on vehicles, the railroad that we have potential interest in, and there's a whole suite of things in the economic development space, from training and site development and others. So there is just an immense amount of bills that we're going to be tracking and watching. And so this week will really give us the insight of what's all going to come out in the next about 36 hours. So I'll pause there to see if there's any questions, or Lisa, if you have any more comments, and then I'll kind of walk us forward where we're headed.
I just wanted to comment from the team's perspective, and thank you for the direction from the board. We have probably tripled the amount of bills that we are monitoring over the last couple of years, because there are so many moving parts in the business, and it's been a good exercise for us, but it is taxing at the same time. And we do have boots on the ground so that we can watch what's going on there. So with that, I'm going to pause for the board.
Director Williams, did you want to ask a question?
Great. There are a couple bills that seem kind of particularly relevant that aren't on the list here. Do you have any comments about LB 120 or about LB 255? The first is about the Power Review Board, which I believe was mentioned earlier, Tim. The second is about renewable energy generation facilities in the state.
Yeah, thank you, Director Williams. I'm grabbing my notes here. Yeah, so LB 120, this bill really is a cleanup of some of the obsolete things related to the Power Review Board. There's some aspects to remove some of the legislative intent or some studies that the Power Review Board undertook several years ago. So that's part of it. There could be other things, and so we're continuing to see what that looks like with the Power Review Board, Tim Texel, and then certainly Senator Bosselman that introduced it. So I'm not sure there could be more to the story. I don't know what that is at the current time, Director Williams, but I appreciate that question. And then I think you asked about LB 255.
Well, you're looking for that one, Tim.
This one.
We have a Nebraska Power Association board meeting tomorrow, and we'll be looking at it. Seth Boyles, he chairs the legislative portion of it as well. So I'm sure we'll be discussing that at that time. So we'll keep you posted.
And if you don't mind,
Thank you, Lisa.
Specific follow-up on 120, it does reference statute 70-1030, which isn't specific to the Power Review Board, but does say that the policy of the state is to encourage and allow opportunities for development of renewable energy facilities. And I know that was a big effort by the legislature a few years ago to specifically support the economic opportunities across our state from renewable energy facilities. And so while cleanup of provisions related to the Power Review Board does seem warranted, this seems like it might be seeking to repeal an economic development and forward-looking energy generation provision that was specifically implemented by the legislature in 2014. So I guess just my question is mostly about this adjacent provision that I believe was approved at the same time as the others listed in 120, but seems to be more expansive and would have what seems to be broader impact. I don't know if you have any comment now, and I don't mean to press for additional detail before the NPA meeting or before the bill tracker is released this Friday. But that specific provision, 1030, does seem as though it would be pretty impactful. And I don't know if you have any thought there now.
Thanks, Director Williams. At the current time, I don't have any thoughts. I did read that and was curious myself. I think that'll take some conversations, and Lincoln that Beth and the team will have. So we'll follow up with you on that one. I think you also asked about LB 255. This bill, there's a lot in it. And as I read it on the first pass, it does create some potential challenges for renewable development. It removes provisions for eminent domain for renewable generation facilities, among a few other provisions. So it has been one that we've had at the top of our radar, and I know many of the developers do as well. So more to come on that one. And I might mention, as Lisa mentioned, the board, the NPA board does meet tomorrow, and then Seth Boyles from our team leads the Nebraska Power Association's legislative subcommittee. So they meet every Wednesday and then talk about every day through things as well. So we'll get better insight also as all of our peers read the bills and we compare notes, and we'll provide the best insight we can to the board and public on those positions. So hopefully that gives you some sense of where we're headed.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And on 255, you mentioned the eminent domain provisions, which I understand. I guess I was concerned in reading that. It seemed almost as though the bill said that it would not be, public power districts would not be eligible to submit any projects for renewable energy of any kind to the Power Review Board for approval. And that seems more expansive than specific provisions related to eminent domain. That seems to be bordering on an all-out provision against any wind or solar project by any public power district in Nebraska. And perhaps I misunderstood the way in which the language relates here, but it does say above or below 10,000 kilowatts. I mean, it seems like they shot, I guess I'll be interested to hear the review of whether or not this is limited to eminent domain for renewable energy projects. Even if that is the intent of the bill, I have significant concerns about the implications for our ability to provide cost-effective energy to the growth that we are seeing. I guess I just have very significant concerns about the intention of this bill, and so I do look forward to updates. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Steve Bruckner, is there anything that you would like to chime in on here?
Sure. LB 255 is a really bad bill, and my strongest recommendation would be to oppose it. We typically do whenever there's any type of a suggested revision to statutes to limit eminent domain, because it inhibits the district from carrying out its business. So that alone would probably put it on the target for most utilities. In addition to that, I agree with you, Director Williams, that it appears the intent of LB 255 is to restrict public power from engaging in renewable energy. The bill is badly drafted. It addresses the special generation statute, which isn't used very often. It's kind of not relevant, but it seems that the intent is as you described it. So we'll follow up further on that, as Mr. O'Brien suggested, and make sure we develop a position and keep the board informed and work with others in the public utility space.
Thanks, Steve. I think that's really helpful. And Tim, I know there's a lot of work ahead to address this. Mary, did you have a comment or a question?
It seems.
Thank you, Director Malhoff. I did. I'm just, it was mentioned that Senator Wayne is championing or has introduced LB 237. I was wondering about the other two bills on here. Which senators have introduced those on our behalf?
Yeah, absolutely. LB 61 is Senator Brandt, and LB 267 is Senator Brewer.
Thank you very much.
But I want to clarify something. This is Seth. I hope you all can hear me. There are two bills on renewable energy, and I think we're kind of conflating the two. We have 255 and 399. 255 is the eminent domain bill. 399 is the Brewer bill that kind of guts the wind for export. that makes all that go to the Power Review Board for that. I just looked again at 255, and regardless to say they're both bad bills, we'll oppose them both, see what we're going to do. But yeah, it's going to be a challenging thing here. The developers need to, I've talked with a lot of them. We'll all be opposing it, so.
Director Mohoff, and for the rest of the board, next month and at the end of each week, you'll be getting our monitoring reports. After we review all of these bills, we'll be making recommendations of our positions on them and next steps. So much more to come on that. Just wanted to let you know, we're just gathering up all of it right now, diving into it, and then we'll determine positions and work through public information and then the rest of the board. So I hope that helps.
And another reminder, and this may be obvious for many people in the room, but maybe not for all. Last year's session was an abbreviated session. We had to act a lot faster. So we were already discussing detailed positions, detailed strategies on legislation earlier in the year. This time it's a little different. So we're taking our time. We're very carefully analyzing all of the bills, but the volume, as Tim O'Brien mentioned, is large, and we need to make sure that we have a good grasp of exactly what's happening. There are lots of conflicting bills. We will bring this up in a lot more detailed manner to the board on matters that really affect us as a utility and our customer owners when it comes to electric utility services.
Just one other comment about our work in the legislature. I know that Seth has been there for a long time. He has good relationships with the senators, and I think Tim and his team, especially Seth, really know what they're doing up there, and will establish a thoughtful approach to all of these bills as we move forward, and appreciate the work. So Tim, I'll let you continue.
Thanks for the feedback and guidance and questions, everyone. Appreciate it greatly. Next slide. I think Javier and Lisa covered much of the next steps, and so we will diligently be following up. We do put a lot of strategy and alignment with our industry, and then with our subject matter experts across the district. As Steve Bruckner knows, he's a great leader and support on many of these, especially with the history of some of the ideas differently come back over time. So as I'm looking at my other screen here, we're at almost 500 bills just in the time that we had the update. So they're continuing to move ahead. Just wanted to speak a little bit on the local front to change gears. We've been spending a lot of time in a lot of the communities and counties across our service territory. Spent a great deal of time also in Cass County. And so last week, the Cass County Planning and Zoning Board approved kind of a comprehensive update to their planning and zoning regulations. One of our big interests in that area was for solar. And so they created some favorable solar updates, and that package goes on to the county board in February. And so they will be taking action on that in the middle of February, I believe on Valentine's Day, actually, so the 14th. They will be moving those forward. So that's some of the work that's happening locally. I have just one backdrop slide on a federal update. Since the last time we talked to the PI committee, maybe one more, Christy. And then to date, we finally have a Speaker of the House, so that took some time. But the first thing is the top part. This is some amazing news, and so it's a privilege that I get to share this on the slide. I want to thank so many folks across the district, Seth for leading this, and many in Troy's business unit and others. But we did something new that we hadn't done ever before. And so Congressman Bacon was kind enough to lead an earmark process for us. And so he did that and was extremely successful. So we got about $7.8 million for the district, one of the largest in the community category, as I recall. And this will help us with reliability items, reclosers, overhead conductor, some of those kinds of things to help our customer owners. So really pleased with that. That was some of the best news we got at the end of year. And then I was with Seth last week when we got the confirmation call from the congressman's office. And so we'll be receiving the money here in the next couple months, and then we'll work through that process. But just great congratulations to many across the district and to share this great news. And we really thank the congressman for his work supporting us. So that's kind of the highlight federally. Take any other questions that the board may have.
Tim, I just wanted to say briefly, just drawing a connection point between the local grant award for the landfill and what you all have been able to do federally. The ground you're covering to get resources for our system and our community has just been fantastic. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for that.
Thank you, Brad, for that comment. Yeah, we've had some good news on many fronts. Thank you, Tim O'Brien, for your leadership with the team, and I know Seth and Michaela and the whole team will continue to grind out during the next weeks and months. So that concludes our report, Director Mulhall.
Eric, did you have another question or comment about legislative and regulatory?
Nope, I just wanted to echo what Brad had shared there. I had questions about the legislative work in Nebraska, but I do want to make sure that it's clear that I appreciate everything that the entire team is doing, and there have been significant successes recently. I hadn't seen the update about the federal earmark. That's great news as well. So again, thank you for all of the work that you have done and all the success that you have brought to the district from our legislative engagement positions. Appreciate all of that and looking forward to additional great work in the coming months. Thanks.
I think we actually got that news on the day that we had our PI committee meeting. So
that is correct. It was hot off the press.
It was a really good day. So thank you for that work. And we'll move on now to North Omaha engagement.
Thank you again, Director Mulhoff. If we can go to the next slide. We always start out with our objective and then really what our outcomes are. We have some great opportunities coming up. So we are going to be talking through some of our meetings that we've been having, but just wanted to revisit this in terms of what the resolution said and engaging our local education, public health, and community-led organizations, and the rest that you can read. Tremendous amount of interaction has been taking place, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I'm excited about some of the, and you'll see in one of the following slides, the outreach that will be happening for the entire North Omaha community. For instance, at the end of January will be a state of the North Omaha, and the community comes together and we'll be able to be part of that engagement. I also know this last Saturday, Director Williams was kind enough to be part of our engagement at the Empowerment Network. We've been continuing our efforts, and we want to talk a little bit more about that. So Tim O'Brien, if you could go over the next slide, and then we have an initial bucket of 3 themes that we've been hearing, but we don't want to close any of that out because we still have some really big outreach efforts that are going to be taking place, including a public meeting that OPPD will be chairing along with community leaders. So with that, go ahead, Tim.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate the tee up here. Got quite a few things to talk about. So I'll give you a little bit of the runway of where we've been, where we're at, where we're going, and then a slide on what we're hearing and kind of the groupings as Lisa described, and then some of the events ahead. So we've extended much of our phase 2, and so we've moved into some broader communication. And Christy, if you'd go to the next slide for me, please. We had quite a few questions from employees and board members and others. How did we get here? How do we build our network? And so I really like models. And so the team really used this model to think about how we can get smarter over time and continue to build and do what I would call sort of boots on the ground networking. And so we've done that. And so we've started with some folks, and who do you know? Who else should we know? We've expanded that. And now we're in this broad communication phase to close out our really big listening tour. And so that's kind of how that process worked, and so I just thought we would share this sort of model and approach with the board and the public that took interest in it. And so, next slide, please, Christy. This I'm really excited about. And Christy, would you click through this? I think it should auto show some of the areas here, but through the last months, we've bucketed the things that we're hearing and found that they show up in 3 ways: community development, public health, safety, support, and education. And so we're absolutely continuing to listen, especially over the next 30 days. We've got quite a few things ahead, but this is where things were just coming together really nicely. So we sat in the office and looked at a whiteboard and mapped all this out, and this is what we've come up with. And so I'll provide just a little bit of an overview on a couple of them, and then I'll shadow where we're going to go next month. So one thing we heard very much is a community development partner. And so if you would go one back, Christy, I apologize. Community development and prosperity was a big topic, and something that we've continued to be very active in with LB 1024 for the development projects, the urban core, workforce development that part of our human capital team does. And so very much a strong presence in community development. So we heard that loud and clear and continue to do that work and do more of it. And so that was one bucket. Next is safety, support, and education. This came up very quickly in the conversations as well. Everything from streetlights to events to questions on bills, sustainability, some of the work that our Speakers Bureau does, and homeowners associations and communities. And so this has really helped my team that does much of the community development and outreach just go around the community. And so if you know Jamie Wagner from our team, she's used this as a great opportunity. She's talked with nearly all the homeowners associations, many of the churches, if not all of them around North Omaha, and just not specifically North Omaha Station, but we're OPPD, we're here, we're interested, we've been a part of the community a long time. Here's my card if you have questions. How can we continue to grow and thrive together? And so it's this work has allowed us to up that even further. So I'm just proud of the work that the team's doing there. And then lastly, at public health, certainly this was something that we heard loud and clear through our outreach efforts of what does this look like? What is the OPPD's role? How can we be a convener and collaborator or supporter in many of these different spaces? And so next month, we're going to spend more time, actually quite a bit more time, on the public health piece. So Douglas County Health Department has been an extremely helpful partner with us, and we've been looking at the social determinants of public health. And so we'll talk about that next month and how we built some actions and opportunities around social determinants of public health. So that's what we're hearing. Those are where things are coming together. Certainly we have much more to listen over the next coming weeks, and I'll show that on the next slide, Christy. So up ahead, many events have occurred, even since the Public Information Committee last week and then going forward. And here's a list of many of them. Last Saturday was a great event at the Empowerment Network, and so we had, I think, probably 8 or 10 OPP staff, and Director Williams was there to talk about careers and opportunities at OPPD to some of the young folks in the community. And so that was really cool to do. We're doing some other things of meeting with groups that are interested in what we're doing. We have, Lisa mentioned the State of North Omaha meeting coming up. That'll be a great stage for us. Several neighborhood association meetings. Some of the things we're continuing to add to this list. And so I think my team's even telling me there's more. So we'll have some other things that we need to add and clarify. And then we do plan to have an OPPD sponsored community conversation in the February timeframe, and trying to find venue and time and scheduling to get that done. It's not an easy task, but we're committed to do it and working on that aspect as we speak as well. So variety of events, that's the external front. And then internally, as I indicated, there's a lot of things on this next slide that we're continuing to work on. So one, I talked about the social determinants of public health. So that'll be a action back to the board and the public there. Then also some more things to build on I think are already strong community development efforts, but we're going to add and build onto that. There's also some great opportunities for us to work really closely with Tim McAreevy's team in terms of customer service, products, just education on bills, sustainability, weatherization, those types of things. So we're taking what we've heard and we're meeting with those teams and building our plans to execute and deliver on. So lots of work that's just going to move into the business and continue through 2023, but I wanted to honor a little bit of time just to share with the board and the public on some of the things that we're doing internally, and by no means is the work done yet. It will continue, and then just these items will just move into our operational routines and procedures and connections with the community. So really appreciate this effort helping us add to some of the great work. So that concludes the prepared remarks we have. We'll take any questions, or I'll turn it back over to Lisa or PI Chair Mohoff.
I'll hop in. Two things. First, thank you for all of the work in this space. It's really fantastic that you know, the way that this is rolled out was the targeted meetings, and now we've clearly sort of pivoted to the very public work that is important. So we were gathering information. So thanks for the continued work in this space and the commitment to getting out and talking to as many people as we possibly can. A quick observation, connecting a few dots here. I'm looking at aligned customer service, environmental and public affairs efforts, and I appreciate that this work will not stop at a certain point. It's informing a lot of the things that we do in different ways. And then my other observation related to that was with the slide two before, slide 51, if we could hop back for just a second, Christy. I look at this and I think about strategic directives. And I think about, you know, what do we as a board have, what have we articulated in this space, and what are we learning through this effort, and how might it cause us to think differently about refinements, improvements, changes to our strategic directives. I don't have any thoughts about that necessarily, but it's just a sort of a realization that I had that, again, this work is not just sort of a moment in time, but it's something that will inform how we think about we do this work as we go forward. So again, comments, no questions. Thanks again for the work.
Thank you, Director Moody. It has been very engaging internally for us to go through all of this and refine what we've been doing and how we can do it better. And we know that the board, and especially for the board members in PI, that we always want to continue to get better. So appreciate that. And Scott, I will defer to you on the strategic directives, but I'm sure that we can have some conversations internally as well as we go into the workshops.
Roger that. Thank you, Lisa.
Yep, thank you.
So thank you for this work. At our PI committee meeting, I had challenged the team to make sure that we're focusing on the wording of the resolution, and make sure that we're not creeping into areas that were not intended by the board to be covered. But I do think that this is a great model, and it could be used not just in North Omaha, but in other areas of the district that are affected by Oppd policies and procedures and work. So Javier,
couldn't agree more. So I just want to take a moment to thank Laura.
Javier had a comment.
That's okay. I have a comment that's not on North Omaha. It's a go back on the legislative and regulatory update. So you can finish these, and then I'll chime in if that's okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to pause and thank Lori Zagurski, Tim O'Brien, Jamie Wagner, Joyce Cooper, many of our employee resource groups. This is all evening and weekend work on top of their other jobs. So I just wanted to pause and say thank you to them for all of that. Over.
Okay, if I may, Director Molhoff, as part of the Public Information Committee, something that I wanted to share, and it's a little bit, actually, it's quite a bit tied to the legislative and regulatory area of OPPD. I want to report out that I'm very proud. I had an opportunity to nominate one of our own board members to the APPA Policymakers Council. So the APPA is the American Public Power Association, and they have a Policymakers Council. I nominated Sarah Howard, and she was accepted by APPA's board of directors. He was an incoming member at large to the Policymakers Council, which is really cool. If you consider there are thousands, literally thousands of public power entities in the country that are members of APPA, and one of our own is representing OPPD in that body. The Policymakers Council assists the APPA in promoting federal legislation that is important to public power utilities like OPPD, and also opposing harmful legislation. It provides advice on other issues of importance to APPA. It is made up of members who serve on either utility boards or elected officials, like it is our case. They meet a couple of times a year, and they get to engage with representatives and congressional staff in Washington, D.C. to support APPA's legislative agenda and help us represent OPPD too. So I'm sorry, Director Howard, I didn't let you know in advance I was gonna say this, but I'm really, really pleased by this nomination and the fact that she was voted in to represent us.
And I'll just say thank you for thinking of me and nominating me. And I'm actually really excited to get to speak with our federal delegation on some of the work that we're doing back at OPPD and the importance of public power in our state. So thank you for thinking of me. I'm really excited.
Great. So Lisa, do you have anything else to add before we?
Couldn't get off mute. I do not. Thank you for letting us take a little bit more time to talk through this. Much more to come on both of these fronts during the next months.
Right. And I know we had kind of hoped to have some action plans going forward for this month, but we, out of courtesy to the folks that we haven't yet met with, and those meetings that haven't taken place, we didn't want to outline a strategy before we got their input. And so wanted to be cognizant of that, of those folks that we hadn't yet heard from before we move forward. So thank you, work, for being methodical and conscientious in that work. And with that, Chair Wagner, that ends my PI report.
Thank you very much. We are on to other business now. We'll start with the confirmation of the board meeting agenda. Okay, so at this time, would any directors like to see any of these consent action items be pulled to the board discussion action list?
I would say 2 and 3.
Okay, we will move the election of board officers and standing committee assignments to the board discussion action list. Javier, do you have a question? Your hand is raised. Okay, no hand, got it. Are there any other requests to make any changes? Okay, we can move on here to, so we'll move on now to review the board work plan. So presently, we don't have any items that have been brought forward that are parking lot items that need to be discussed here. As Director Spurgeon mentioned, SD2 is still on the work plan, but has now been moved to an on-hold status. And the next part of that work will be defined and developed by Finance Committee as they move forward this year. Any questions or items that need to be discussed, board, at this point? Okay, Director Mulhall?
Yeah, so SD 13 that was on the PI agenda, I believe that it still needs to have some work done on it, probably in this calendar year. We didn't start that in January because we felt like with the change in leadership, Director Howard or whoever is chairing the PI committee can move that forward as they see, as they get direction from the rest of the board. So that's on hold, but certainly we'll have work going forward.
All right, thank you. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, we will move on now to the next agenda item, which is Power with Purpose, Solar, Natural Gas, and Transmission Update. Mr. Bai, are you kicking it off?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We have Megan Walker here today to walk through some of the discussions about the 2 new natural gas units. She's managing that project extremely well. 2 new greenfield sites bring a lot of challenges in today's environment, and the team continues to show really good progress there. So we have Megan, and then we'll have Courtney to share a solar update too, which we also have seen some nice progress in those places. So Megan, if you want to take it from here.
Thank you, Troy. The next slide, please. And the next slide, sorry. All right. For our Standing Bear Lake Station, the site progress is approximately 42%. We continue to make good progress at this facility in the site, so it's very exciting. We had hit a major engineering milestone in December with our 90% design review. Significant progress is being done there, and we're looking to close out that design phase here pretty near term. From a construction perspective, if you look at the bottom picture, that's the site approximately mid-December if you're looking south off of Military Road. On the left-hand side, there is what is our substation area. Activities going on there include installation of a ground grid, various concrete duct bank pours, and then also our steel support installation. On the right-hand side of that picture is our generation facility that's being constructed, and good progress is being made there in the engine hall area and foundations, as well as our engine hall erection and the admin building just on the north side of that engine hall area. And in December, we did receive our generator step-up transformers. If you look at the bottom right picture, we received 3 of those at the site, and those were placed on foundations. And then also in December, we had Wardzilla, who's the supplier of our major equipment of our reciprocating internal combustion engines. They came out and did some assemblies of those engines. And then we also received the generators that are associated with that, and various preventative maintenance tasks were done on those generators in preparation of eventually moving them to our engine hall later here this spring. I did want to call out on the upper right-hand picture, we have our Oppd staff, various members from our operations and maintenance that are able to get out to the site, observe the construction activities. In this particular case, they were able to observe alongside the Wardzilla engine assembly team and ask questions and kind of get some firsthand knowledge on the engine assembly. So a really great opportunity for our staff to kind of get things going on their engagement and understanding of the equipment as we move forward. If we go to the next slide.
Hey,
yeah, go ahead.
Remind me, is this a Wardzilla team that comes to us from Italy? All the engineers that help do the assembly?
They're from overseas. I think some might even come from Finland too. But they have a specialized assembly team that kind of goes around various parts wherever their projects are. And so they came to site to do some assembly of those engines and shared some good knowledge with our staff. Okay, Over here this is Turtle Creek Station, our second generation facility that we're constructing. Also making great progress. We're at 43% complete approximately. Again, both sites are on track for a Q1 of 2024 site readiness state. Similarly to Standing Bear Lake, Turtle Creek also hit a major engineering milestone with our 90% design review that occurred early in December. At this site, the first picture on the bottom is bottom left is our substation area. As you can see, we still continue to make good progress. We've had a relatively mild winter, so we've been able to continue construction activities in the substation. In this particular area, the focus continues to be on installation of the ground grid, pours of concrete duct banks, and then also steel structure support installation. From a generation perspective, the administrative building is being erected with walls going up, and we continue lots of underground piping and duct bank work for all the facilities that are going there for the power block area or generation portion. In December, we were able to complete our heavy hauls with Siemens Energy, who is providing our major equipment of our 2 gas turbines and 2 generators. The bottom right picture represents one of the heavy hauls of our gas turbine number 2. That occurred at the end of December very successfully. So that's another great milestone to be for the project. And then similarly, other things of note is we did set our gas turbine number 1 on its foundation. And although it's not noted here, last week we were able to set our generator number 1 on foundation. So a lot of great activities going on at the site. In the upper right-hand corner, again, we've got our operations and maintenance staff out at the facility, working alongside and observing our Siemens group and Zachary, our EPC vendor, or engineer procure construct vendor, as evolutions go on at the site. So a lot of great activity continues with these projects, and I'll open it up for any additional questions that you guys might have.
All right, do any, Director Spurgeon, I see your hand.
A curiosity as I've been listening to this report and reading the information. Engineering activities, when you talk about a percentage of the design review, is that kind of like, here's what we planned from the beginning, as we review it, we course correct or we make minor modifications as needed? Could you just share a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah, so we design phase this is particularly with respect to Zachary, our engineer procure construct vendor. So they come along and they design the specifics at each of the sites. And so this 90% marks, we're at the end or very close to the end of that design phase where they're getting into very specific information. How are we going to, what's the specifications for the material we're going to use? How are we going to construct things? What is everything going to look like down to, wiring, connections, that type of thing. So it's all the design part and how it comes together at each of the sites. Does that help you?
That is helpful. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Megan. We appreciate your updates on a regular basis here, and most importantly, your project management skills on these very large projects. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I think Courtney's next for a solar update.
Very good, thank you. Courtney, go ahead.
All right, great, good morning. If we can move to the next slide. We'll give an update today on Platteview Solar. So much like the progress that the gas units are making, we're in various phases at the substation, which is where the project will interconnect, and then the facility, the actual PV facility. So the construction is ongoing. You can see photos there to the right. This is the work that needs to be done within the sub to interconnect. As we talk about the facility itself, we are in the process of reviewing the 60% design packages. So what we kind of just talked about on the gas side is happening for the design on the solar side as well. There's still prep work for the site that includes removal of the pivots, which has been completed, capping of wells so that they may be used in the future if needed, and then removal of any concrete pads. So that work is still in progress in advance of being able to do any more construction at the site. The most exciting thing really when we kick off construction at the site will be starting to see those piles being driven. That'll begin as soon as the ground thaws. So this is weather dependent work. So depending on how winter continues to proceed, that'll dictate when we really start to see activity at the site. But looking forward to doing that here in the next few months. And then finally, we continue to have regular updates with the county leaders and the community, just to make sure they know what to expect as this project moves forward. With that, that is the solar update for this month. Are there any questions I can answer?
Dr. Mulhall?
Yeah, so since this is kind of in my backyard, how are we continuing to interact with those folks in UTAN who were probably opposed to this project and who have, you know, kind of a backyard investment in how things go up there? So are we continuing to work with the city of UTAN and folks in that area to let them know what's going on?
So as it shows there, we are continuing to work not only with community leaders, the county board, but also those landowners in the community. Michaela Valentine is a big piece of that, out with both AES and then our EPC firm, which is Blue Ridge Power. So on getting that team really integrated into the community and continuing those discussions. And I don't know, Michaela or Tim, if you're on, you can comment further, but
and I really quickly, and this is part of our commitment, the commitment we made to this Saunders County commissioners year and a half ago or 2 years ago, that we are the face of the project. Even though we do not own the project, we have a contract for the purchase power for from this facility, that we are really the face of this project, and our commitment was and will continue to be to provide county commissioners updates of anything that happens in that site. So we have been more active with the county lately because, of course, there's a lot of activity happening and will continue to happen in the next year. But also I want to take an opportunity to remind our board that even after the project is complete and fully operational, that engagement doesn't stop there, right? That we will continue to provide frequent updates to the county commissioners as needed. If there's ever a change in ownership, for example, in the facility, that we will be on top of that and we will report that back to the county, and all the way including 20 plus years from now, the decommissioning of the facility, how that's going to go. So that commitment will continue to be strong.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Courtney. As always, we appreciate these updates too. Okay, folks, this is the last agenda item on our committee meeting. Very short agenda for today. I appreciate it. Next month, I'm sure will be longer. We will see you all on Thursday at 5 p.m. at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center for our board meeting. Thank you very much.